So you come to hear the tale of the critter on Seneca Rocks, the blood eagle. Yeah, I don't play about that. I should. I helped put it there. You see, it all started in the summer of '84. Charleston was still a raw memory. Folks were just starting to get back on their feet. So we see the hope and try to rebuild some semblance of a future. We had only heard his massive wings at first, but folks had already gotten to calling it the Blood Eagle on account of the mutilated corpses of Brahmin left behind. It was only when folks started to go missing, and something had ripped the roof off of old man Scram's place, that we knew we had to do something about it. It had been spotted at the top of Seneca Rocks, so we knew we were going to need some wings of our own. We made our way to Weed Airport, hoping to find something that could still fly. But it was all pretty much trash. So we salvaged what we could, rolled up our sleeves, and got to it. We worked in shifts, day and night, and it wasn't long until we had ourselves 4 airworthy vehicles, all armed to the teeth. The only thing left was to put our plan into motion. We baited the trap, and we waited. We wouldn't have to wait long. It swooped in and took the bait. It was massive. The hot rod was the first one in. Its job was to keep it distracted long enough to buy the 2 anchors time to get into their positions. It beat its wings furiously in an attempt to escape, but our gunship was there to box it in. We had it cornered now, and it lashed out desperately to defend itself. That was when the first harpoon caught it in the wing, nailing it to the cliff side. The second anchor moved in and scored the other wing. We weren't taking any chances though. We went shot for shot until we had it completely pinned down. Almost felt sorry for the son of a bitch. Almost. We opened up with everything we had. A deafening roar of gunfire filling the air with the smell of gunpowder and the wails of our dying prey. We made it pay for what it had done. And just like that, it was over. It was dead. The 4 of us just sat there at first, staring at it. Something just didn't feel right. I looked to my companions to see if they felt the same. There was Pretty Boy and his scorpion. Pretty Boy was our resident ghoul. If any of us had gone the short end of the stick, it was him. We'd found him inside Poseidon. Seems he was an engineer before the war, had had the misfortune of getting himself trapped in a reactor room before the riots locked down. Almost put a bullet between his eyes too, until he asked me if I had a spare Nuka-Cola. What he laughed at looks, he made up for in ingenuity. He built his scorpion from an old fusion reactor, shielded it the best he could. There wasn't a single one of us except him that could fly it for more than 5 minutes before it made the puke from the rads it gave off. He said they made him feel warm, whatever hell that was supposed to mean. Frankly, I think they were baking his brain. Might explain why we found him sitting motionless for hours at a time. He would just snap out of it and smile, like nothing had ever happened. Then there was Dutch and his stinger. Dutch was a bit of an enigma at first, having just appeared in camp one day shortly after Charleston. Didn't take us long to figure out why. Turns out Dutch and a handful of Thorpe's goons were tired of his bullshit and they decided to jump ship. Not like I could judge him now, consider it my past. He worked hard, kept to himself, but I could tell the man was just itching for a fight. So when I offered him a chance to fly one of the machines, he leapt at the opportunity. Couldn't wait to even a score, he said. He was almost too eager. He called his gyrocopter the Stinger, but it looked more like a flying coffin to me. I want to get caught dead in that thing, but he loved it. Said someday he was going to conquer the skies. If only I had listened. Kitty and her Pegasus. Now there was a feisty little gal if I ever saw one. Kitty grew up in Sutton, working alongside her brothers and dad in their mechanic shop just before the war. You'd be hard-pressed to not find her up to her elbows in grease. working on that souped-up hot rod of hers, and that damn jukebox that played nothing but oldies. She worshipped the past. Hell, I could hardly understand half of what she said.
Redness, you know? Hands? What?
I was really impressed when she converted that old Pegasus into a flying machine. It bit her dad's. She worked her fingers to the bone, modifying it, bolting on a Robco turbine and a missile system. She wouldn't let anyone else touch it though, doing double shifts just to finish it on time. Think the only thing she cared about more of it was that old power armor frame she drug with her from Sun. That was his too. He had Dag in it. Finally, there was me and Lucille. I was a former Army brat, growing up on military bases up and down the East Coast. It was a no-brainer signing up when I come of age, served 2 tours, and got my discharge paper shortly after seeing action at the Battle of Anchorage. Not getting into that well-this civilian life, and so I found myself in a Western Maryland correctional facility the day the bombs fell. Guess you could say I earned myself an early parole. I wandered for quite some time before I ended up in Appalachia, building myself a new life. Lucille was pretty much a flying junk heap. Hadn't been slacked together using scraps and whatnot. You couldn't tell just by looking at her, but between her articulated rotors and her auto-loading cannon, she was a force to be reckoned with. I still remember the day we got taken down, crashing into the mire and barely escaping with my life. After that, it just wasn't safe to fly. Just too damn many of them. Whatever they were feeling, they kept it to themselves. We just looked at each other and headed home. Soon, one by one, we went our separate ways, each leaving for different reasons, until none of us were left. Poor pretty boy finally ended up going feral. Not sure if it was the rads or he just gave up, but I like to think that each time I take down a bull, I'm finally giving them the peace they deserve. As for Dutch, what can I say? Once a reader, always a raider. I guess you could say he moved on to bigger things. Last I heard, Kitty was part of a caravan headed northeast. Seems she caught wind of some kind of military convoy barge with some T-60 that she just couldn't wait to get her breadhooks on. And as for me, well, I listened to my gut and went looking for his nest, and I found it, but not one human remained. It had been fending an egg, and a horrible truth. How are we to know the buckethead Sierra Bravos were not only real, but turning folks into mindless thralls? We had just sealed the fate of Appalachia by killing the one thing that stood between us and them, inadvertently creating a symbol for a group of murderers and maniacs. As the world crumbled around me, I'd nearly given up hope until I stumbled across an individual with his own story to tell. That's a tale for another day.